have you found the kind of men that you are now drawn to, has that changed since you've gone through this? So tell us who you were drawn to before and what you're drawn to now.
Good question. So I'd say years and years and years ago, like people just stopped sliding in my DMs to like hit me up. Like men only approach me with like meaningful conversation now. I don't ever really get like cat calls. I was saying that on the way here, I got some cat calls.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
But like generally speaking, I get approached with like, there's a higher frequency in the approach from the beginning.
Yes.
And listen, I don't mind where you're from or what your approach is. I'm like, I feel so confident and secure in my own energy that like we can play. Mm-hmm. You know, like it doesn't matter what you say to me. I can come back to you.
Yeah.
Or just ignore you.
Yeah. Symbols.
And so before, the men that I were drawn to, subconsciously, I didn't know this, but subconsciously when I look back, a lot of them are like my stepfather in some ways. There's some like, so like, for example, my stepdad's the middle child of 3 boys, father with some highly narcissistic issue with the bond with the mother. One of my ex-boyfriends is the middle of 3 boys, father with some narcissistic traits, etc., you know?
Okay.
But they weren't all like that. I'd like to preface this as well by saying that like, all of the relationships that I had that were toxic, they all had great times. They were all great guys in a lot of ways, but they, I suppose, lack the education and carry their own trauma. It's like, from my perspective, like it's all love for all of them. I don't, there's no bad blood. I love all of them. I'd go to all of them now if they had like an hour of need or something, you know? And I'm so grateful for the experiences, so grateful, because I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for them. And I always think, you know, the people that trigger you the most are your greatest gifts, you know?
Yeah.
And so the men before, they were, to be honest, like I've been treated really well overall. There's just been a lot of toxicity in and amongst it.
Okay. So what kind of guy are you drawn to now?
Oh, you've got to be a provider through and through. Like that's not necessarily a financial thing.
Yeah.
It's more of a like, if the apocalypse happens, can you go and get us a fish out of the sea? Can you hunt? Like, are you a man's man? Like I need a very masculine man.
Okay.
I've got a very like powerful energy about me. That sounds so arrogant. I don't mean it in an arrogant way.
I know what you mean. I can imagine with some guys, especially if you went on a date with them, right? They would feel that they're not contributing a lot of mental and emotional capacity to that space because of how you kind of show up in that space. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you mean.
And so they might be intimidated by it or feel like, oh, I'm going to say she doesn't need me.
Oh, I so need men. I so need
that's
them.
not the word. It'll come to me. But yeah, I get what you're saying. I can see why.
Yeah, like I think that we live in a day and age where it's not that hard to be unusual. I think a lot of people fit into a lot of boxes. And I don't mean that badly. I think we've been conditioned to do that. And so because I live very outside the box, I'll challenge the narrative. I'm not scared to. There's nothing passive about me. And I find that if a man is not really rooted in his masculinity, he won't be drawn to that because he's more passive than me. And so a woman cannot be submissive to a man that's passive or more passive than her.
So I concur. How do you recognize between a difference between maybe a masculine man is just observing a woman who's in her masculine and he's like, that's just not for me?
Fair.
Because I hear what you're saying. I'm not saying this is what you're saying, but I've heard sometimes where a woman might say, oh, well, you know, if I'm in my masculine, he has to be more masculine than me, and that's what puts me in my feminine. And it's like, no, babe, you have to be in your feminine first to attract that masculine man, right? So how do you tell the difference between that?
I don't know if it's so much of a case of telling the difference.
Okay.
Maybe. So I'm a very feminine, very submissive woman.
Okay.
However,
it's a very big however.
It is a big however. Because I'm not passive and because I am somewhat intelligent, you know, you do have to, as a woman, you have to have a man that's more intelligent than to lead you, because otherwise you're not going to trust what he says.
True.
Right? So it is true, like what Jordan Peterson says, it, you know, the more intelligent you are as a woman, you know, the less men there are to choose from. That is true, but that doesn't like scare me. I don't think there's any shortage of like good men on the planet or intelligent men on the planet. Go on, I know you want to say something.
Well, I was going to say that not that there's less men to choose from, it's just less men that maybe satisfy that desire to be with a man who you can look up to in that sense.
Yeah, 100%. And so first of all, I think you have to move with the belief. There's this whole narrative between like men and women, right? About like, oh, women are like this and men are like this. Listen, there's no shortage of good men or women on the planet. There are amazing people everywhere you go. And your job as an individual is to make sure you are the most amazing version of yourself that you can be, that you feel aligned with.
Yes.
And as long as you do that work on feeling aligned with yourself and review yourself and be like, I don't like how I showed up in that moment. I feel like I let myself down. I can do better than that.
Yes.
And when we do that, and whether that's going to the gym or eating better, or I don't like how I handled that argument with my mum, or I don't like how I responded to my friend, or I could behave better at work, or I know I'm getting sloppy with my work. It doesn't matter what it is. As long as you're committed to being in alignment with where you feel comfortable with yourself, you will always attract people that are in alignment with you.
Yes.
So how do I recognize this in men? It's very obvious to me. First of all, I can just tell, but then, I also work with the esoteric and I'm very good at reading people and know a lot of psychology. So that helps the skill set.
Well, help the ladies out who maybe aren't on that level, but they want to be able to recognize
okay, so
a good
I'll give
man.
you some really good, first of all, it's so true. You don't ever need to chase a man. I don't believe in the whole chase thing anyway, because to chase something or to encourage somebody to chase you would insinuate that someone's running, which means avoidance, which means you're looking at insecure attachment styles. So we don't need to be chasing no one anywhere. What we're looking for is warm, reciprocal energy, right?
Yep.
If a man likes you, you will know about it. Now, if a man likes you and you don't know about it, that means he's not available. What I always say to women is, like, there's no such thing as confusion with men, yeah? But if a man's hungry, he's going to eat. It's that simple, yeah?
True.
You guys are wired to do it. So the way I see it is like this. It's like, if a man wants you, he's going to let you know. Your job as a woman is to be warm, receptive, and appreciative of his advancements towards you. You let him know that, because you don't want him to feel like he's being creepy or putting pressure on you or anything. You need to let him know, like lingering eye contact, etc., like physical touch, like an appropriate level depending upon like how well you know one another, etc. These are all things that you can use to communicate with somebody that you're open and warm to their advances, right? With a man, for example, let's say a first date, I always notice how rooted in his masculine energy is from the way that he behaves. From like, is he caring about me? Does he want to make my life easier? Does he open doors for me? Does he pull out a chair for me? These are just like basic masculine movements. Like men naturally move towards these things, depending upon culture as well, right?
I agree, but I would say that I think in this generation, like open the car door, taking a chair out to put, sit down and stuff, especially for a first date, that is very traditional in comparison to today's culture.
Yeah, for
maybe
sure.
like within the relationship, that definitely might happen. But I think and you can tell me, I don't date guys, so you tell me, right? But I don't imagine a lot of guys in this modern generation will be doing that from the offset.
That's all I get.
That's all you get.
That's all I get. That's all I call in. That's all I'm interested in. I think that you get your standard in life. Like if your standard is that you'll live in like a bed sit, you'll get your standard. If your standard is that you don't want to work and you'll live only in like a premium accommodation, that's what you'll get.
So then I hear that. So then do you not think there's any cultural influence based on the generation?
Yeah, absolutely. I do think so. So I know what I'm talking about is quite traditional, but it's also kind of instinctive, right? In the sense that like, for example, men are designed to like want to make women happy. That sounds like quite a broad straight statement and quite a strong statement. But what I mean by that is, right, it's like if you think about sex, for example, it's a lot more about the man's performance, even though that sounds bad in a way, but you know what I mean. It's like the man probably does more of the physical activity most of the time.
Yes.
Right?
He's the driver.
Yeah. Like, the man tends to be like the leader in that regard, right? Same like if you're carrying a heavy bag, your man's going to want to carry that for you because you're physically dominant in the relationship, right? So men are designed to want to make women happy in some ways. We are also designed. Really?
Yeah. I wouldn't say that they're designed to make women happy, because some guys would say you can't ever make women happy. But what I would say...
That's the wrong women then.
Yeah, well, I think, here's the thing with the feminine is constantly moving, right?
Yeah.
So something, and if I speak for the guys, maybe not every single guy, but something I think a lot of men experience is that one day she will want something and the next day she wants something else. And a lot of time guys get very frustrated with that, because the masculine typically is known for being very logical, consistent, right? With direction. The feminine does this. And sometimes for guys, sometimes I say this to guys, you can't expect her to be you. She's not you. So sometimes she'll want this one day and then sometimes she'll want this, right? So I think the endeavor of trying to make a woman happy is not, and you won't like me saying this, ladies, is not one that men should aspire to. I think it's more about being a foundation and providing the frame in which she can be the woman that she wants to be.
Yes.
Right? Because ultimately we're all responsible for our own happiness. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's what I said earlier, right? So I'm not disagreeing with you at all.
Sure.
What I'm saying is in those moments, if you see your
Sure.
girl struggling with something, you naturally want to help her.
Yes.
Like you say, you're problem solvers.
Sure.
So that's what I'm not saying that you guys are made to make us happy, as in like you exist to make us happy. That's not what I mean.
Sure.
You want to make our lives easier.
Very.
You want
I
to solve
agree.
our problems. That's
I
what I'm
agree.
saying,
I
right?
agree. Yes.
So it's like if we're having sex, you want us to have a good time.
Yes.
If we're at a restaurant and there's nothing we don't want to eat on the menu, you want us to take us somewhere where we can eat something we like, right? You
True.
want to solve our problems. You want to make us happy.
Yes.
Just so we want to make you happy, but in maybe different ways, right?
I get that.
So what I'm saying is that the movement between the two, right, is that what was the original question? Because we've gone off on a tangent.
That's
now.
okay, but I don't mind it. You carry on flowing.
So okay, so the masculine, like,
And then you can ask something
it's-
because I've grilled you a lot, and then you know.
No,
you
it's
can-
fine. I like it actually. I
Okay.
like the challenge.
Okay.
But the masculine, the masculine is kind of designed to make us happy, just like we're designed to make you happy. Like it's that polarity again, right?
Got you.
But I also feel that with the masculine, if we're going back to the initial thing that we spoke about, like with the being led, like how do I find it easy to be submissive with a man? I just have a higher caliber of man, just like a man that isn't more intelligent than me isn't going to cut it for me, so
Are you different with that man?
Say that again.
Are you different with that man?
Well, I wouldn't be romantically interested in them, so there'd be a boundary, I suppose.
Yeah, but what I mean is, okay, let's say you go on 2 dates with 2 different guys.
Yeah.
One guy is very much the caliber of man in his masculine, etc., that you like and that you
Yes.
enjoy, and then one guy isn't. Are you different on that date?
No, I'll always be myself because
When I say different, I guess, are you more... Would you say you're more, quote unquote, submissive with that caliber of man that you are looking for than with the other one?
yes, naturally, because the man that is the caliber, I trust him. I don't need to think about anything. Whereas if I feel that perhaps the other man hasn't got the skill set required to keep me safe, as in your skill set isn't better than mine to keep me safe,
Yep.
then I can't relax.
I hear that. How do you know if you don't provide them both the equal amount of space to do that?
I do. I will always. I'm always observing. So first of all, if I'm
Keen
on the
eyes.
date with you in the first place,
Yes.
then I will already assume that you've got somewhat of that skill set in the first place, because otherwise you wouldn't even have me on the date.
So what kind of cues do you see? Because obviously, if you don't know a guy, right, you have to give him the date is for you to get to know him.
Yeah.
Right. So what kind of cues do you see in a guy that makes you go, okay, this is a guy that I would go on a date on?
Behaviors like what I said to you earlier, like if maybe they're out with some friends and they open the door for the friends that are girls, or things like this, like just the way they carry themselves,
Okay.
how sure they are of themselves, things like that. I would never be never be dating someone that's like getting drunk. I feel like when men are drunk, they become more of a liability in some ways. Like
I think that's people in general. Yeah.
Yeah, so no, 100. I'm saying
No,
from
I'm
a woman's
agreeing with you.
perspective of like protection.
Yes.
Is kind of how I'm saying it, because I agree with you. I think that if you're intoxicated and you're sloppy, then of course everybody around you is vulnerable, and you're also vulnerable. But I'm saying from the view of being the woman, you're with the man for protection and like feeling safe with the man.
Sure.
If you're now sort of like all over the place, you're attracting unwanted attention, you're making me more vulnerable. So things like that, just like personal conduct, how they are out and about.
Yes.
And the way they speak about themselves and what they do. So things like their purpose, like how do they speak about the work that they do? Are they lit up by it? Do they complain about it? I find, because I live between here and Bali, and you get in Bali, there's like a community of expats where everybody's a bit of a go-getter and they don't necessarily resonate with the 9 to 5. And then when I come back to London, there's a lot more 9 to 5 lifestyle. Nothing wrong with either. Everyone needs to find what works for them. But what I notice here is that like the conversation is almost repetitive. Is that so? I'll notice a lot of people always talk about where are you next going on holiday, and they'll always talk about like complaining that it's like Sunday night and preparing for like Monday morning work and things like that. So
That's so interesting.
It's like when I speak to people that are lit up by what they do, that's a big attraction for me. So for me as a woman, going back to that whole provider thing, when I meet a man that is lit up by what he does, and he's found some sort of purpose for him, whether that's his purpose for his entire life or just for like 5-10 years or whatever, it makes no difference to me. Just knowing that you've got that together, that's a really attractive thing for me. So if I'm privy to that kind of information at this stage, that would be quite important.
How much do you think, I remember I was talking to a friend about this a few months ago. How much do you think the work of attraction, the work a man does to be able to attract a woman, most of it happens before he's even met her?
Hope you really enjoyed that clip. If you want to watch the full episode where that clip is from, then I want you to click right here where you can watch the full episode. And if you're ready to claim your man today, enroll in my program below, and I'll see you there. Wishing you an amazing day.